Welcome to the Power of Data podcast, brought to you by Dun Bradstreet. I'm Susan McKay. I'm the CMO at Dun Bradstreet, and I'm very pleased to welcome today Geoff White, who's our guest. Geoff, you are a noted investigative journalist with a career spanning at least 2 decades. I think probably most famously reporting on the Snowden leaks, but also an author, a podcast presenter. Maybe you can tell us a little bit about yourself and what you've been doing.
Yeah, sure. So I'm basically an author and investigative journalist. So what I concentrate on is basically organised crime and technology. So whether organised crime and tech meet and cross over, that tends to be where I hang out. And of course, as technology has assumed a bigger role in our society, it's also assumed a bigger role in the lives and jobs of criminals. And so organised crime and tech are coming together increasingly in much larger and larger amounts. It used to be just computer hacking that I covered, but now tech is influencing fraud, it's influencing prostitution, drug dealing, and of course money laundering, what I wrote about in the most recent books. So those links between tech and organised crime are getting deeper and deeper.
And so the book, I think, is called Rinsed. It was recently published. It covers financial crime, which is really the focus of what we want to discuss today. What are some of the challenges and opportunities, I guess, that technology is presenting when it comes to organised crime?
Sure. If you're looking to launder money for criminals, you've got to realise that any organised crime enterprise, almost all of them are looking at making money. Now, great, you make money as a criminal, fantastic, but what do you do with it? Where do you take it? I mean, I think people have this idea that criminals just hoard cash, but cash is bad. It's suspicious. It's vulnerable to getting stolen by your rivals. It's vulnerable to inflation as well. So you want to get rid of that cash. You want to put that cash somewhere. And even if you're making money digitally, money can be traced. If I steal money from your bank account and I transfer it to my bank account, if I've hacked you, well, it's obvious who did it. It's me. I've transferred to my own account. So all of these organised crime enterprises need money laundering routes and networks. And what's brilliant for the money launderers is obviously finance has digitised, technology's influenced finance. So you have online account creation, speedy transfers, all of which have been a boon to money launderers. But in addition to those kind of tech innovations in traditional finance, you've also had the opening up of a whole new realm of finance, cryptocurrency, video game marketplaces, NFTs, which exist kind of outside the traditional financial system. And they're in a way even better for money launderers because you don't have regulators sniffing around. There are no regulations governing NFTs at the moment. Also, these new marketplaces, the valuations are all over the place. Money is sloshing around. As a money launderer, that's a fantastic thing. You can stick in your criminal money, hide in the crowd, and there's no police lurking to catch you. So these new realms of finance are increasingly of interest to money launderers.
And so can you, how big is the problem? Can you quantify it? Is it quantifiable?
Quantifying money laundering is difficult. It's not something I've done in the book, just for the clarification. There are figures floating around of between 2 and 5% of global GDP is laundered money. I mean, you're looking at trillions in that. And there is interesting research about cryptocurrency and how much cryptocurrency is connected to illegal activity. And in a way, that's a bit easier to track because most cryptocurrency is viewable, publicly viewable. The transactions are viewable. And there are many companies who track all of that data. And what they try and do is say, well, okay, here's the illegal area of cryptocurrency. Here's the Bitcoin wallets, for example, that are handling ransomware payments or fraud payments. Let's work out how much those wallets get through and we'll work out a percentage. The percentage tends to be quite low. I mean, 1%, few percent. And that might be sort of an encouraging story. The problem with that is you've got a bit of a challenge about visibility. If you know those wallets are tainted, you can work out how much they're handling. But if, for example, I, as a drug dealer, sell some drugs, make some cash, change my cash into Bitcoin, well, that's illicit Bitcoin. It's illegal Bitcoin. But you don't know it's illegal because what I've done is taken cash, which is anonymous, and transferred it into Bitcoin, which is pretty much anonymous. So working out how much, for example, Bitcoin is illegal money is actually quite difficult because you've got to know where the illegal money is coming from into the crypto system before you can calculate it. I've seen estimates as high as 20, 30% of cryptocurrency is illegal. So the numbers, the scale of it's actually quite difficult to calculate.
And so I think one of the examples I saw was that if you recently came into some money through an inheritance or through a property sale, the best place to invest is actually in cryptocurrency because it's non-traceable, as you describe.
Yes, there are big advantages to cryptocurrency. I'm not one of these people who believes all crypto is illegal, it's all bad, why are we bothering with it? It is like it or loathe it, it's one of the most innovative and disruptive financial innovations we've seen in the past probably generation. And also it's been amazingly resilient. I mean, I've read the obituary of Bitcoin. I read it pretty much every year for the first 10 years it was around, and it survived. So it's a survivor. It works. It has some big advantages.
Did you invest yourself, by the way?
I did not.
At the start? Did you wish you had?
Well, yes, everybody wishes they had. When I first started covering Bitcoin, it was $6 to one Bitcoin, and it's now, I think, 60,000 is around the price it got to. Obviously, I could have made millions. However, I read a fantastic blog post about this by somebody who's saying, yeah, if you're one of these people who's thinking, I wish I'd invested at the beginning when it was cheap, you would have invested and you would have sold when it got to 50 or 100. Mm. You wouldn't have hung on until it got to 60,000. So the idea of, making huge money, not sure about that. The other thing is, as a journalist, I need clean hands. If I have a huge Bitcoin investment and I cover Bitcoin, people could say, well, hang on, you've got a dog in this fight. Whereas not having any of it, I can at least, treat it equally. But certainly there are advantages to it. The thing is, of course, it's completely unprotected financially. You lose your money, you lose your money. And we've seen exchanges get hacked and people's money stolen. We've seen people's individual wallets get hacked. We've seen people being scammed. There is no protection for this. If your money's in a regulated bank and the bank folds, the government protects you up to about 80,000. In Bitcoin, that's not the case. So just be very, very careful. Do not get involved unless you know what you're doing.
Yeah, fair enough. And so for companies out there who are managing financial crime, what should they be thinking about? What should be top of mind for them? Because as you talk about the financial institutions, the regulation that's coming in, it's new, it's changing all the time. It's hard to stay on top of it. What should companies be thinking about when it comes to financial crime?
I think I'm in the fortunate position of not running a large company, unlike Dun Bradstreet. But you've got two things going on really. On the one hand, you've got the regulation coming through. So you've got lots of different types of regulation: European regulation, US regulation. Obviously, if you're trading internationally, you'll have US regulation and so on. Keeping up to speed with that is a full-time challenge, and I think that can seem overwhelming and sort of bewildering. But from what I've seen of it, a lot of these different types of regulation tend to cross over. If you're doing the right thing by British regulation, it's likely you'll be doing most of the right thing by US regulation. Mm-hmm. So just starting somewhere. But I think beyond that, it's taking a step back and thinking, okay, we can tick all the boxes here and pass all the regulations, but we can still be victims of financial crime. And if we do, what's going to be the impact on our customers, on our shareholders, on our employees and staff? How are we going to look when it comes out that this has been done to us?
So brand reputation, exactly. As well as the people who are the victims. So is there an opportunity for the financial institutions to start collaborating on this? I mean, is it a competitive advantage for them? And how should they be thinking about dealing with regulation, but also making sure their customers are safe?
Yeah, it's a tricky one, this, because I'm aware financial institutions particularly are regulated around data protection and privacy. I would not want my bank to share my data necessarily with another bank. So it's working out those ways where you can share data, but in an anonymized way, in an aggregated way, and so on. It is really important to do that, because what criminals are looking for is leverage between different institutions. So if I look at several banks and I go, okay, Bank A, I know that they check the postcode on the address, but Bank B doesn't. So I'll register my account there because I can get away with that without having the postcode. But I know then that I can use Bank B to set up an account at Bank A because they will check my details. The criminals are playing off these different financial institutions against each other. So the more disparity you have between different financial institutions' setups, the better it is for the criminals because they can play one off against each other.
Right.
If Bank A says to Bank B, look, we're having a huge problem with fraud on this level. We're having a huge problem with financial crime on this. We're seeing money mules coming in and registering using these techniques. Bank B is going to go, okay, all right, we'll pay some attention to that and we'll stop it as well. And the criminals will find as they go from institution to institution, the doors closing everywhere for the same reasons. Now, you talk about competitive advantage. Cynically, will a bank turn around and say, well, yeah, you've got a problem with that, but that's our win because we'll take your custom. The rising tide will not, will sink or lift all boats here. All institutions need to pay attention to this. If Bank A gets hit and you're doing well, Bank B, because Bank A gets hit, hold on, because the criminals are going to go straight to Bank B afterwards. You are next in line. The idea that it's competitive advantage, no, the criminals are just going to go around and hit you all one after the other.
Okay, so the scale of the problem is huge. The banks need to pay attention, but it's not just banks, presumably. You've talked about technology as kind of enabling the crime side. Can it also be an aid in tackling some of these issues? And if so, we'd be remiss in not talking about what AI can do as an example.
Yeah, absolutely so, yeah. I mean, it's interesting. Technology it's not that technology wants to enable money laundering and financial crime. Technologists don't wake up in the morning and think, oh, I'm going to set up a money laundering system today. However, if you think about the things that money launderers want, there's a lot of crossover with the things that technologists want. If I'm laundering money, I want basically three things. Number one, I want a system where there's lots of money sloshing about, so I can drop my $1 million of stolen money or whatever into the system and no one bats an eyelid. Number two, I'm looking for something international. I want to put my money in London and take it out in Los Angeles. And number three, I want somewhere where there's no regulation. I don't want cops sniffing around, regulators sniffing around. So those are the things I'm looking for as a money launderer. Now think of like a tech startup and its dreams of success. Lots of money sloshing about. Yeah, we want that. Values all over the place. Uber, Airbnb. Yeah, big market. Lots of value fluctuation. International. Yeah, I want to scale internationally. I want my app to be available everywhere from London to Los Angeles. No regulation. Brilliant. Think of all of these companies and where they set up. Lack of regulation is where they go as technology companies. Yeah. It's not that technologists want to help money launderers. It's just the two end up occupying similar territory. But you talk about how technology can help.
Yes, that's key.
Absolutely. And what I think at the moment with things like artificial intelligence is I feel like the running is actually with the defender's side at the moment. Yes, we are seeing crooks using AI, but in the same way you and I might use it. You know, if I want to make my phishing email a bit better, I could use ChatGPT. If I want to scope out my victim and find out information about them, I can, aggregate their social media and find out what they're interested in. Auditing virus code, hackers will use AI for that, but it's not advanced tactics. Compare that with how AI is being used by defenders, cybersecurity defenders, financial crime defenders, anti-money laundering tools. It's a perfect big data challenge. You've got gazillions of transactions. You're trying to spot the dodgy ones. Well, AI can help with that. So I feel the momentum is really there. But I think for institutions, if you're going to go down that AI track, it's very easy to get dazzled and I imagine ripped off for these contracts. It's starting with the problem you want to solve. And I'd say start small and go, okay, we've got this problem. How will AI help us solve that? Get the hang of using AI for that problem before introducing a sort of mass scale AI strategy, because then you can work out the kinks and how you would apply it and then go to bigger and bigger projects.
Right. I
worry institutions going to this thing of, we'll get a big AI project going and it just sprawls and it never actually tackles the problem it's meant to tackle because it kind of never gets off the ground.
Okay, so if we need to define what the problem is, I guess that is the obvious question there then is what role can data and analytics play in helping institutions and companies in a more far-reaching way to identify what the problem is and how they might rectify it?
Yeah, well, companies like Dun Bradstreet, you're sitting on these troves of data. I imagine you've already been using what we used to call machine learning and now call AI to kind of go through that and so on. And I was thinking, in advance of the interview, how incredibly useful this stash of data is. You've got clean data as well. You've got reference numbers. You've got the famous Dunn's number, helping work out which companies are linked together. It's a brilliant, clean, structured set of data for AI to start working on. And so for other institutions who are looking to try and wrangle this and tackle this, firstly, getting your data somewhere, making sure you've got it all, you've found all of your data, working out what's what and structure it in some way. You can't start these big data challenges until you've done that. If you've got data sitting everywhere and it's unstructured, AI will get there eventually, but it's going to be a heck of a lot easier to run these artificial intelligence systems, or indeed any, computer analysis, any data analysis, if your data is structured, if you know what you're doing and where the sort of hotspots are that you want to focus on.
And so that's quite theoretical, but I guess if we take some real world challenges like the war in Ukraine, for example, where when sanctions were implemented, companies really needed to be able to trace, ultimate beneficial ownership and so on. Yeah. How much does that play a role in what we're seeing in terms of real world activity that's going on?
Yeah, it's really interesting. I mean, Ukraine's been in the wake of the conflict, and actually during the conflict, I've been talking to people in sort of anti-money laundering and sanctions enforcement, and their jobs have got harder, more interesting, I would say, possibly, but a lot harder. Just keeping up with those constant lists of new people, new entities, new individuals, and so on. And of course, now new cryptocurrency entities. If you're dealing with cryptocurrency or dealing with people who deal with cryptocurrency, you've got to start taking those into account. I will say, I have a certain amount of sympathy because at a certain point, if somebody desperately wants to evade sanctions, I mean, look at North Korea. I've covered North Korea a lot. North Korea's been under international financial sanctions for decades and gets around them and steals money and launders money. So at a certain level, you just have to do what you can and be able to sort of sleep at night and say, look, we tried everything we could. I don't think you can stop all of it.
I don't think we can ever stop all of it, but we can certainly do our part, can't we? So we talked a little bit about data and how important it can be in identifying the problem. What about when it comes to preventing the problem? Is that also, is it preventable? And if so, how do we get ahead of it?
It's not 100% preventable, but to make people feel better, I don't think crime has ever been 100% preventable in society. Since people had possessions, other people were stealing them. We've always had sort of crime. The speed with which things move is a big problem, I think, now. As I say, technology has rolled across the financial sector, and the expectation on the part of customers, of companies, individuals, clients, entities, is that money will move very quickly. I want my money fast, because you're competing between financial institutions for who can do that. The issue then is, by the time you spot this and have used your analytics to spot the problem, are you still holding the money? Are you still holding the individual's data and so on? Have those things been moved on? So that's the challenge, is the speed of this. I would hope that there's an acceptance on the part of customers, clients, that some delay is necessary to carry out those checks. I'm surprised when institutions turn around and say, well, we have to do this instantly. If I, as a customer, face a delay, if it's an unreasonable delay, I have a problem with that. But if it's a delay that, they say, well, look, it's a large amount of money moving through your account, it seems odd, we're checking it, I wouldn't be that, well, I'd say, well, yes, that's fair enough. It's not a £10 transaction. I've just moved through £10,000. And yes, you're going to take a few hours maybe to check that it's proper, maybe even a couple of days. So I hope that the institutions can have conversations with their clients and customers and say, look, at a low level, everything will be fine, but things may slow down at a higher level. And you want that, because if you didn't want to transfer the $1 million, we will stop it and we will get it back. Whereas if we transfer it instantly, like you've told us you want to, you can get ripped off and defrauded. So,
and I think that's where there's an expectation now for real-time decisioning, isn't there? Which isn't always possible. And actually, the consumer in the end should be the one who's protected, no matter how long that takes.
Indeed. As I say, unreasonable delays, no. But I think, I hope the conversation can be had, as I say, with individuals and with organizations to say, look, if we want to stop this stuff, we've got to start slowing things down when they reach a high level of value and an unusual transactions. Yeah.
And so based on your research and the work that you've done for your book and your podcast and so on, do you see this continuing to be high on the agenda for corporates overall?
Absolutely. And I think it should be, because I think there's this idea that, financial crime is a sort of spreadsheet problem. It's ones and zeros. It's white collar crime and so on. And what I've tried to do in the book repeatedly is start with the stories of the people who suffer. I mean, some of the stuff in the book is quite grim. Some of the stories are about child sexual abuse, about prostitution, people trafficking. All of these crimes at an organised level generate money. That's why the criminals do it. Well, then you've got to do something with the money, and that's financial crime. So the idea, if you work in sort of financial crime, it's this sort of fairly sterile area. No, that if you trace that back, that money has come from someone who's suffered. They might have suffered fraud, and we've seen people, commit suicide. We've seen lives ruined by fraud. It's not, that's not just a financial crime. But we've also seen drug dealing, prostitution, as I say. These are real crimes with real effects on real people. So, I feel like financial crime needs to sort of be taken more seriously. But also, as we talked about, you're going to get increasing regulation. You're going to be under pressure, as you say, you've pointed out, to move money faster. And you're competing on a global scale and competing with new types of finance. So all of these pressures, all this velocity that institutions feel on their finances is going to make that financial crime area a bit heavier.
Yeah. I think it's great that you're doing work to humanize the problem, right? Because it's too easy to just think of it as something in another region, particularly when it comes to the technology and the crypto. What would you say is the biggest misconception then? Because it seems like you're touching on that it's not a human problem, right? That it's actually an institutional problem.
I think that's part of it. The biggest misconception is that financial crime doesn't affect people. It's this white collar spreadsheet ones and zeros business. It's not. In almost all of the stories I've covered, someone suffered somewhere. And my job as a journalist is to find them, talk to them and let them tell their story. And when you hear that, you think, wow, this wasn't just money to you. It's never just money. The money is somebody's savings. It's somebody's house. It's somebody's retirement. For the heavy end of stuff, the money was somebody's drugs that they got addicted to. The money was income from prostitution where the person suffered. So it's all of that. But the other sort of misconception about this is that financial crime and those crimes sort of sit separately. They're absolutely intertwined. I mean, one of the stories I covered about North Korea was a very famous North Korean hack. allegedly, the hack on Bangladesh Bank in 2016, attempted theft of $1 billion of money. Now, the North Koreans did not get their $1 billion of money, partly because of financial controls actually kicking in, but also because it took them a year from when they hacked into the bank to steal the money. A year is a terrifying amount of time. Why as a hacker would you wait a year? Get it done now. You might get caught or discovered. The reason they waited a year was because where are you going to launder $1 billion? Okay, you break in on day one, you steal $1 billion, you transfer it to who? Kim Jong-un? You've got to have a bank account to launder that money through. So setting up those accounts took them a year. Had they not been able to set up the laundering methods, they wouldn't steal the money. They can't steal the money until they've got the laundering methods. So the idea that financial crime and crime, the crime it comes from, is separate, that's not true. And furthermore, if you can crack down on the financial crime and the money laundering, they don't do the crime in the first place. They don't run the prostitutes. They don't sell the drugs. They don't do the fraud. Because unless you've got a pipe to put the money through, you don't do the crime. So it plays a really important role, I think.
You've got a lot of passion for the subject. I can see that. So you obviously take it personally. So, and a little more personal question then. At Dun Bradstreet, we're all about making smarter decisions. And so we talk about the power of data as being an enabler to making those smarter decisions. So have you got a personal situation where you've used data to help you make smarter decisions? And if so, what was the result and what was the outcome? And was it successful?
Yeah, interesting. Yes, I do this all the time. I'm a bit of a geek, to say the least, and I love spreadsheets. I'm the king of spreadsheets. There are very few problems in my life that I haven't found solvable using a spreadsheet. So I just find that really useful to put everything on there and add up all the numbers and stuff. We bought during lockdown an old banger of a car. We bought a cheap car, and there was this thing, pay cheap, pay twice. This was a money pit. This car, we sunk money into it, repairing it, and in the end, we got rid of it. And I thought, well, what do I do now? Do I buy a new car? And so I thought, well, how much did this cost us? So I added up the cost of the original car and all the repairs and the road tax and all that kind of thing. I thought, well, that's interesting. That's quite a lot of money. But then I worked out, like, if we bought a more expensive car, if it had lasted longer but needed fewer repairs, how much that would have cost per year. And then I thought, well, what if we hire a car? Maybe we can hire a car when we need one. So I added up all these different options. It was fascinating. At the end of the day, I discovered that, for me anyway, how I'm using it, owning a car of any type in any context is about £2,000 a year. That's roughly what it costs you to buy, hire, long-term, hire purchase. And I found that really fascinating. It doesn't matter. It doesn't matter what, they'll all cost me about the same amount of money. So I was really interested by that. I did think about publishing it on the internet and telling people, so I'm showing people, but I thought, no, that's too geeky.
So let me guess, you drive a Ferrari now? Is that what it is?
I can occasionally rent a Ferrari, but if I rent a Ferrari, I've blown my year's budget on a car. So if I rent a cheaper car, I can rent it more often.
Well, there you go. So you've made a smarter decision. Well done you.
Yeah.
I can't think of anything else, but other than to say thank you very much for your time. We've really enjoyed having you on The Power of Data, and really appreciate your insights into financial crime.
Been a pleasure. Thanks for having me.